I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and it is time to play with some cotton. Today, we are going to revisit something I tried a really long time ago. Many years ago, I tried to speckle on cotton yarn with Tulip one-step tie-dye, and we got this gorgeous spread and watercolor type effects. And I remember feeling, too bad, the colors don't strike quickly enough when you don't get sharp speckles. This is beautiful, just not what I thought that we might get. But I don't think I've tried that technique followed by steam setting. I think when I tried this, I speckled the dye onto the cotton yarn and then let it sit for 24 hours before washing it. Since then, I have done more heat setting with tie-dye, and I have tried to speckle with RIT dye powder, with jacquard eye dye, and both of those worked great on cotton to create fine speckles. So I want to give Tulip one-step tie-dye another shot. I want to give this another chance and see if we can get fine speckles if I use a lighter hand and then we follow up with steam setting versus some of the other techniques I might have tried in the past. And if I have done this followed by steam setting in more recent times that I'm forgetting, apologies, but given the success we've seen with other powders that dye cotton, I want to give this a shot. Before we talk more about our blank canvas here today, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my lab partner today, Cass. Cass, thank you so much for being my lab partner, and I really hope you will enjoy this video and the yarn that I'm going to dye for you. I plan to try this on 3 different yarn bases. I have Knit Picks Comfy Color Mist, which is 75% Pima cotton, 25% acrylic. I have Knit Picks Cotton Boucle, which is 100% cotton. And then I have Knit Picks Dishy, which is also 100% cotton. The Dishy is a bleached white, and the other 2 are more of a natural bare off-white color. So we're gonna dye all 3 with the same colors and then compare the effects on them, because sometimes the twist or the composition can really make a difference. Since the one-step tie-dye has everything we need in it to dye the yarn, I am going to pre-soak in plain tap water. Now you might notice here that I've got yarn for a few different videos, and this is because although you can use old mixed dissolved tulip tie-dye, it is best to and most effective to use it as close to when you mix it as possible. So I want to have plenty of yarn ready to go to use up all of the dye that we are going to be playing with. Anyway, I am pressing on the fiber to try to squeeze out as much of the air as possible. And I'm going to let this soak overnight. I have a number of different colors to pick from. And remember that the colors of the powder doesn't necessarily translate to the color of the liquid or even the color that you will see on the finished garment. These extra packets come from when I buy a kit of 5 bottles that has 5 refills. These are all refills from some of these different types of kits that I have received over the years. Wow, look at how different these purples look. So maybe if we did purple, I don't know what the difference between purple and violet. If we did, let's do purple, black, teal. Yeah, let's do purple, black, and teal. A lot of these other colors would also be rather fun, but I want to pick things that I think will be rather pigmented because we are going for speckles. And here you can see the purple, black, and teal. Those all probably came from one kit. I popped this yarn that is pre-soaked overnight in my spin dryer for not very long. It is still definitely very damp, but it is no longer dripping. It's possible I might end up wanting a tiny bit more water in it, but I don't want to give the colors an opportunity to spread a ton. Now, one thing I do want to point out right now is that there are some black speckles on this, what was it, the Comfy Okay, there are these like little specks on this already. I think that that's just part of, I would say that this cotton acrylic blend feels the least damp. I have a spray bottle that I can rinse out should we need to do that. So now I'm gonna go put on my respirator mask, safety glasses, and gloves so we can start trying to speckle. I think that opening and emptying these little bags is by far my least favorite part of the process. I don't know why, it just makes me nervous because tie-dye can stain. So I do have a damp paper towel that I'm putting the little baggies on. And I'm adding the powder to some dedicated dye containers that have lids. So this way I can close the lids. And I'm also doing this on top of the yarn. If some of the powder escapes, it'll stick to the yarn, and that will be good. Ooh, but you can see some of the colors just from those baggies. All right, I do see some tiny little specks on here already from probably that turquoise, or not turquoise, teal. We're using teal. All right, my hands are dry. And I'm going to come in to the powder. The powder is extremely fine. Maybe mixing it with something like salt is something to consider in the future. But I'm coming in and spreading it super finely. I took up a small pinch and I am barely letting my fingers move together as I come across. And so right now, I do see speckles. I do see purple speckles here on the cotton. And let me zoom you in. Okay, we've got little specks, little itty bitty specks. Whether or not this will stay, I don't know, but it is working. Okay, I think that this is the black. It's a little heavy, so I can put some back in the container and try to go really, really lightly over the yarn. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of powder I would recommend combining, with this, because it might react with sugar. Salt will probably help help it spread out. I don't like using salt for speckles. So yeah, I'm not sure. This color hasn't really sunk in too far yet. It's supposed to be black. Cass, I really hope it doesn't end up being brown. Let's come in with the teal, which is less pigmented from what I've seen. Oh, as I do a larger splotch. Although the larger splotch might give some more. I will want to wipe off my fingers before flipping the yarn because I don't want to add all of this dye from my fingers onto the yarn. So I would say the purple looks like it's working great. The teal also seems to be working well. The black is looking rather yellow, and I think I forgot how the black breaks. So I think I'm going to focus on the teal and the purple and add little hints of the black to minimize the amount of orange and yellow. Cass, I'm really sorry. I think I forgot how the black breaks because it's been a while since I've done this. I'll add a little on the other side just for consistency though. Okay, the black is absolutely taking longer to sink in than the other colors. And I will say that some of these purple specks are spreading already. So I'm going to flip the yarn very carefully. Not only do I not want to fling powder out anywhere, but I do not want, if you've looked at any of my like dry rub kind of stuff, I don't want to rub and spread the colors in any kind of way. So now I will speed things up and we are going to speckle these other sides. I added a little bit of the black to the comfy cotton and the dishy, but not the cotton boucle, because I know that maybe the colors wouldn't be some of Cass's favorites, and so I wanted to try to keep the more jewel teal and purple on the middle one. I did an experiment many years ago where I did heat versus time versus vinegar on both wool and cotton yarn with the one-step tie-dye, and I found that if you are going to steam your yarn for about 30 minutes, the amount of pigmentation that you see in the yarn in the end is fairly equivalent to if you just let it sit for 24 hours. And so that result made me sometimes decide when using tie-dye, even with t-shirts, to go ahead and steam it versus waiting a longer period of time. So since I didn't remember if I had speckled and then waited 24 hours, if you think about it, things could spread more over a longer time scale. And so there might have been some differences there from the technique. So there's a lot that we just don't know. But the dyes seem to be sinking in fine with just this barely damp yarn. And so now we need to go heat set it. I see speckles so far, and we're gonna go steam set this now. So I'm going to carefully place the yarn inside a steamer basket for my multi-pot, and I am going to go steam this for I think 40 minutes on the stovetop. The yarn is currently steaming in the steamer basket, but since I just turned it down, I can say that I am seeing spread here. We saw fine speckles, there is spread, and therefore I'm feeling close. We'll have to see it dry, because sometimes you can't see things, we'll have to see it dry, but I'm feeling pretty close to conclusively saying that tie-dye, Tulip one-step tie-dye cannot be used to speckle. Whatever is mixed in there helps those colors spread. Which, if you think about it, makes sense. When you're tie-dyeing a t-shirt, you want the color to sort of, as you apply it, you want it to spread and move through the garment. Yes, there's resist from where you have rubber bands and stuff like that, but you don't want it to just sort of stay directly where you apply it. You want it to move through the layers so you get these beautiful, fantastic blended designs. We did try this on 3 different types of cotton yarn, all that have different twists and slightly different types of cotton, so we might see something different in one of the skeins versus others, which is why I like to do a side-by-side comparison like this. And I will also add that I have another video using a variegated dishy cotton from Knit Picks that we are going to go heavier with the powder. And a quick peek into that steamer basket might show some speckles still. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Either way, I am really glad that I tried this project again, because given the success I've had with other powders that can be used on cotton, I was like, well, is it just that I was really heavy-handed? Because if you go back to the very first episode of Dyepot Weekly, when I was trying to speckle with Kool-Aid, we got speckles, but they were a bit more blown out. My techniques have improved overall as I go through the years. And so it stands to reason that it's worth revisiting something that I tried that maybe didn't work, because also the results of playing with the Tulip powder on yarn are gorgeous and blend and fun. It's just not necessarily speckles. In just about 10 minutes, the steamer basket will be done, and then we can look at the yarn. Okay, the 40 minutes are up, and see all of that spread. There's a chance that there are some spots with speckles, but like, yeah, it's not looking very promising. I'll say that. There could be a couple. There could be a couple. I will say the yarn is very pretty. Ooh, that is really, really pretty. I mean, I'm not seeing speckles. I'm seeing, there might be a couple very, very slight things that you might call speckles. Like I see like a little pink dot right there. So is this like what we saw when we first added the fiber onto the yarn? Or the powder onto the yarn? Absolutely not. Like there's, without question, I think that if most of these speckles spread out, of course, we're still going to need to wash it. So it's possible that like what we saw with the Dye More Synthetic when we did acrylic dyeing, that we might have like some of the spread might just wash out. And we are very, very steamy. I'm gonna go get this away from my camera lens and we're gonna let it cool until I can comfortably handle it, and then we will wash it. As for the steamer basket, no color dripped through. So all of the color we added is in the yarn. Let's wash all of this yarn. Now, I am in the middle of filming a Synthropol video where I will have one skein of cotton that I will wash with Synthropol and one that I won't. So that is still coming, but I think the results are promising. But back staining, like, it's possible that we already have back staining just from that first little bit of rinse. I am using warm water, and I'm going to add just a little bit of the Synthropol. I'm not sure if it is like magical, and part of me wishes I was wearing gloves for washing tie-dye, but I just had a good experience, so I'm feeling rather optimistic with this here. But we do have more yarn this time. Okay. And as for speckles, I do see what might be some very pastel speckles. Certainly, we got small patches of color, which when you knit it up will end up being, 1 to 2 stitches. So it will still, could on a garment, have a speckly appearance. But what we do not have are those sharp speckles, because the pigment just does not strike quickly enough to allow that to happen. So now that the water is starting to get paler, I do want to add a tiny bit more of the Synthropol. Fill this up with water and let it soak for approximately 15 minutes. I feel like that this soak is potentially important and useful and helpful. But my thing was that I didn't want it to soak, actually, that's not bad. I didn't want to let it soak when we were seeing a lot of color bleeding, because we don't want to cause back staining. But we'll be back in like 10 minutes or so. All right, it's been probably closer to 15 minutes. Okay, we see a fair amount of color came out during that soak. And now what I'm hoping is that the rest will rinse out relatively easily. Again, using warm water, because it is cotton and we want this to come out. Now, when dyeing yarn with tie-dye, there will probably be bleeding even after you rinse the clear on the first time you wash it. So just like with a tie-dye t-shirt, if you wash it on its own the first couple of times, I recommend doing the same with whatever you make out of tie-dyed yarn. But there's a little bit there. Granted, this is not as pigmented as you can be with tie-dye, but I'm sitting here a little bit speechless. I think that I really like this. I think it makes less of a difference with like acid dyes or food coloring. I think that it makes more of a difference if you have something that is more of a bleeder. I would cut away from the washing at this point, but I am curious. I mean, that looks clear to me. I'm gonna go ahead for good measure and rinse this like 2 or 3 more times, but then I'm gonna put it through my spin dryer and hang it up to dry. Here is the dry yarn. Wait a minute, Rebecca, you didn't say the finished dry yarn. And that's because I don't think we're finished. This is beautiful, it is soft, it is pastel, and I think that there's a lot of fun with that, but I wish that there was more color in it. And well, that's something that we can fix. I have more of these colors, and so we can go in heavier. But first, I do want to evaluate the speckles. And here is our comfy, there are things here that could count as speckles. But, and some of it, like I think that teal wouldn't speckle well. We got, with the purple and the black, we have more things that feel like specks on all 3. Like here, you can see some discrete little specks. Some areas with the purple, there's a little bit, but this really doesn't compare to what we've seen with some other dye types. And even here in the Dishy, there are some discrete specks. Overall, they are fairly blown out, and so my recommendation is to not try to force the dye to be something that it's not. Tie-dye spreads out, and so let's embrace that. Let's embrace the letting it sort of do its thing on the fiber. The thing that always disappoints me with the Tulip tie-dye is that, and well, it's maybe not even that dye, it could just be cotton in general, is that the colors feel so much more saturated when they're wet than when they're dry. And I have a feeling that cotton, maybe like silk, well actually it does become a little more see-through when it is wet. There's a whole genre based on that, I suppose. But because it can become see-through, that's why you might see the pigment more when it is wet than when it is dry. And so I think that there's something fun here. And if you want to get a pastel mottled effect on cotton or wool with the tie-dye, with the one-step tie-dye, you can do something like this and try to really finely speckle it. But if you want sharper pops of color, go with another dye type, but also use more. You're gonna have to use more of the pigment, and you're gonna have to use more of the pigment than you think you need to use, because what you see originally is a lot more intense than what you end up with. I always say that if you're not satisfied with how the yarn ends up, you can always dye it again, and you can always add more color. And I do want to be clear, I think that this is beautiful and pastel. But since my lab partner Cass indicated a preference for jewel tones, I want to pump up the volume and get there. And we may as well do it on all 3 to just see how the dyeing and then over dyeing works on these 3 different cotton-based bases. And because I filmed a couple other videos with these same colors when I was setting this up, I know that the washing isn't going to be that much of a problem. So that's another reason why I'm excited to just go for it. Now let's take one last look at this before and go dye the yarn again. I pre-soaked the yarn for 30 minutes or a bit longer in just some plain tap water. I put my respirator, safety glasses, and gloves back on to dye the yarn again, and brought out the saved sealed containers of the tie-dye in the black, the teal, and the purple, and added it really heavy this time all over the yarn. And once I was satisfied with the amount of color coverage, I went ahead and steam set it for 30 minutes off camera. I didn't feel the need to soak the yarn as long this time because I don't mind if we have white left behind. If we see some of these more pastels left behind, that's not a concern for me. What I want is to have uneven color coverage. And so if you want more even color coverage, well, you shouldn't be dealing with a dry powder, but then you definitely want to have make sure the fibers are more evenly saturated before you start. But if you're going for something a little more uneven, it's totally fine for the fibers to have some dry patches potentially. As there was a lot more pigment in the yarn, it did take longer to wash. So I did use a few soak to let that pigment come out and give it that time versus manually having my hands on it the entire time. But eventually I was able to rinse this yarn until it was clear, and it is so much more saturated than it was before. I cannot wait to see it dry. Before we look closer at this finished yarn, there is a skein that I need to pull out. Here is a skein of cotton yarn that I used using the exact same colors. And I do see more fine speckles here than what we saw when I was attempting to get fine speckles. They're still spread, but I'm also just seeing more specks here. So I'm not sure which order these videos will be coming out. So when I attempted to get speckles, I didn't get a lot of speckles, but you can. It just, ultimately, tulip tie-dye is not the best way to get speckles on cotton. Cass, I am so glad I decided to dye all of this yarn again. I did enjoy the soft pastels from our speckle attempt, but I enjoy these more saturated colors that much more. But on our comfy and just our dishy, the final colors are fairly muted still, which I think comes down to the fact that these one-step tie-dye kits really aren't that pigmented. And I was clumping on that powder really, really heavy, and we still don't have a lot of payoff. Now, if you're about to say you should have waited a couple days, I do have a video that I've probably mentioned here where I looked at steam setting yarn with this tulip tie-dye versus waiting for 24 hours. And I did have samples there that I steamed and then let sit for 24 hours. And I did not see a big change or difference between any of those three. Now, waiting for 30 minutes and washing, not waiting for 24 hours had less color payoff, but the heat sort of did a similar effect to a long time scale. So the reason why we don't have as much color here isn't because I heat set it versus waiting. I love the way the Knit Picks Cotton Boucle picks up color. I don't know if this is the most pigmented because I just added that much more. It dyes up like a dream, and it's a yarn base I just really, really enjoy. And I think that the purple and turquoise with some yellow pops in there is just a lot of fun. And Cass, I really hope you're gonna love this yarn. I would say the Comfy, which is our acrylic blend, is a hair less pigmented than the Dishy that is 100% cotton. And I think that this is consistent with what I've seen. Some t-shirts that have, I'm not sure if it's acrylic, but they have a synthetic thread at the bottom. A lot of times that thread won't take up any tie-dye. And so, yeah, I don't know if I've tried just dyeing acrylic yarn with the tie-dye before. If not, then maybe that's something I should just throw in as like a tie just to see if it picks up color at some point. But anyway, I think that that is a reason why this is less saturated. So the biggest difference is that on the 100% cotton, there are some areas that feel very pigmented, and all of the similar areas on the Comfy are softer and more muted overall. I am so, so glad I decided to revisit this project. I was really unsure if, because I didn't see real speckles, real sharp speckles on cotton using tulip tie-dye, since I tried it so long ago, if that could have been a result of the technique. Maybe I went too heavy. And so I'm really, really glad that I did give this another shot, because especially since the Rit and the Jacquard eye-dye really, really surprised me with the sharpness of the speckles that I could get in either of those cases. In general, cellulose fibers are harder to dye than wool. And when I say harder, I mean in a more relative term. You can use more types of dye on wool, commercial acid dyes and food colorings in that family. There's more, I think, more options that do work on protein fibers, but not everything that works on protein fibers will work on cellulose fibers. Cass, thank you so much for being my lab partner today and supporting this episode of Dyepot Weekly. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a lab partner for an episode, get shoutouts and yarn dyed in the video, where you also get to pick the yarn base and tell me colors to avoid, you can find more information in the listing that's located in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. And if it is sold out, don't worry, I restock it as soon as I have more space on my schedule for filming more videos. So if you would be interested in being on a waiting list, please message me on Etsy. If you're looking for other ways to support the content here, I do have a Patreon. You can also find a link to that down below in the video description. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I'm definitely not done playing with cellulose fibers. I actually filmed a few different videos using these same packets, and I mean, I guess I did give a little sneak peek to one of them already. So make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a new video. And if you want to see other ways that I have successfully dyed cotton yarn, I do have a playlist that is sort of groups all of those videos together in one place, which is always worth checking out. I actually have a lot of different playlists where I group different things, and so if there's something specific you're looking for, checking out the playlists from the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel is a great place to start. Thank you so much for watching.